Welcome to Ballot Battleground, Nevada. I'm your host, Ben Marjat, a reporter at KRNV News 4 in Reno. I'm passionate about making politics in this critical battleground state more digestible to the average voter and pushing past the talking points to press politicians for answers. On this show, we take deep dives into the people, ideas, and debates shaping Silver State politics. It's a very special episode of Ballot Battleground Nevada this week because we can finally let the cat out of the bag on something we've been teasing for a little while now. Just today, we announced that my stations, News 4 and Fox 11, will be airing the first Ballot Battleground Nevada debate on Question 3, an issue that could upend how Nevada's elections are held. If you're unfamiliar, it would bring open primaries and ranked choice voting to Nevada's elections, and we'll be hosting an in-depth conversation about the possible benefits and pitfalls in a special Ballot Battleground Nevada debate featuring two guests from each side of the issue. It is set for October 15th at 4:30 p.m. on News 4 and Fox 11. It'll also air on our sister station KSNV News 3 in Las Vegas as well. We can't wait to bring you this critical discussion in just a few weeks, so put it on your calendar, set your DVR, or listen to the debate after it airs right here in this podcast feed. We'll put a link in the show notes with all the specifics, as well as a link to a previous episode explaining ranked choice voting and open primaries with the always fantastic Gwynn Center. All right, now to the rest of the show because we've got a lot to get to. First up, if you're registered to vote in Nevada, which you all better be, you probably got a mailer this week from the Secretary of State's office. It's not a scam. It's not your ballot either. It includes a signature verification form. So what is that? Why are election officials urging you to send it back? And what if you don't feel comfortable sending the postcard back in the mail with some of your personal identifying information on it? We went to the source himself and asked all those questions of the Nevada Secretary of State, Cisco Aguilar. Then a little later, more listener questions. We want to answer as many as we possibly can in the run-up to Election Day, so we brought back our friend Chris Murphy to ask and answer your questions. Like, will Nevada count ballots faster this year? Can a president remove the tax on tips without Congress? Who is behind Question 3? And much more. And stick around until the end. We've got another edition of our fact-checking segment. We take a deeper dive on two ads you've seen on our airwaves on the price of prescription drugs. One ad attacking Jackie Rosen, insinuating it's not in her personal interest to lower the cost of drugs. Another from Rosen herself touting the progress she says she's made on the issue. Okay, enough prologue. Let's get to the show, starting with Nevada Secretary of State, Cisco Aguilar. And I'm thrilled now to be joined once again by the Secretary of State of Nevada, Cisco Aguilar, a proud University of Arizona Wildcat who is currently on the ASU campus in downtown Phoenix. How's it going?
It's going. It's always an opportunity to educate people about the election cycle, especially young aspiring lawyers. We need good election lawyers.
How does it feel to be walking around that campus in downtown Phoenix? Do you feel like you're in enemy territory?
My heart hurts a little, but hey, it's the goal of making sure we have talent in the pipeline for future elections.
Well, and for listeners who might not have heard us banter about this before, Secretary Aguilar, a U of A alum, University of Arizona, and of course their bitter rivals, the Arizona State Sun Devils, where I went to school many years ago. So, but we can still have a cordial conversation here about Nevada's elections, and we'll do that now because a lot of people are getting a postcard, a letter in the mail. I got mine, I think yesterday or the day before. Good. What is in this envelope? What do voters need to know about this?
Well, there's multiple goals to what we're trying to accomplish. We have the implementation of the VREM system, voter registration election management system. The data we have in that system is critical to ensuring that our elections remain safe and secure, but accessible. And I say this all the time, and I'll say it again, is Nevada runs some of the most safest, secure, and accessible elections in the country. And as we're reviewing that data, we know that people's signatures evolve over time. And we thought, how do we get voters to update their signatures so that when they walk into a polling location or they fill out their mail ballot, it's the signature that they use. And so this is a way to streamline that process for voters, but also to ensure the security of the system and also to the goal of increasing capacity. It is important that we get results out to voters election night or close to election night. This will help the clerks process the mail ballots faster and quicker because signatures will be updated. Currently, when you mail in your ballot, that signature gets scanned and matched to what's currently in the database. If the signatures match, it moves into processing. If it doesn't match, it goes to a bipartisan review where there's a Republican and a Democrat. They look at the signature on the ballot. They look at the signature that's on the registration form. They have access to the signature from DMV and previous election cycles, and they'll determine together whether or not that's the voter's signature. If it doesn't match, it goes then into curing. And that's where the time consumption is, because the county has to reach out to every voter that needs their ballot cured to verify that is the actual voter. And so if we could cut down on the number of ballots that need to be cured, it'll increase the capacity of the county to process ballots to get those results out to the actual community. And that's the goal, is increase security and increase capacity to get information to people when they want it.
And the concern, of course, is that over the course of many election cycles, sometimes 10, 20 years of people voting in the same state, your signature changes. And obviously that might make it a little difficult on the election worker to kind of parse out is this actually the true person voting?
Correct. And, there are processes for voters to update their signature now, but we felt this was the most efficient way to get a majority of voters to consider updating their signature if it's changed.
So what do they need to do specifically? Obviously, open this, fill it out, send it back.
That is correct. There are options, right? One is you can fill it out, put it back in the mail and send it back to the county. You can drop it off physically at the county office. You can stick it in an envelope. There's options that are available to the voter, whatever the voter is comfortable doing. We just want to make sure that it is secure and that it can be processed in an efficient way.
Gotcha. We have heard a couple of concerns from folks who are worried about, it's their signature, which is a piece of identifying information, as well as maybe your date of birth or your social. If you don't want to
Not the
just
full
stick that
social.
in the mail, right? Yeah, it's just the last four,
Yes.
but still, or a date of birth or something like that. If they don't want that to be exposed when they put it into the USPS system, you're saying they can put it in a different envelope or physically take it in.
That is correct. And again, they can take it to the post office and directly drop it off at the post office. They can put it in a blue box. I think it's important for people to understand that the mail system is secure and remind them that it is a felony to steal information from the post office or a mailbox. Again, we know that the system works the way it's intended to work, and we want to take advantage of these opportunities, but I respect and understand concerns voters may have. And that's why we gave various options for this to take place.
How many thousands of these postcards? I mean, is it every single registered voter that's on file? Every Nevadan's getting one of these?
Pretty much. There are some counties that chose not to participate. There are counties that chose to participate because they understand that the stronger the data we have in the voter registration system, the better off and more secure our elections are going to be in the future.
All right, we're 40 some days out from Election Day now. What else should voters be thinking of? Obviously, ballots not going out for 2 or 3 more weeks.
Let me just say this. I appreciate the diligence of voters in Nevada asking the good questions because it helps us get the information out to other voters. And the fact that people are actually paying attention is a good thing. And if there's ever a question or ever a concern about a piece of information they're receiving in the mail, they can always call the Secretary of State's office. They can call their local clerk's office, and we will help them verify whether or not the document that's in their hand is an official document. Every official document that comes for the elections will have a notice that says official mail. And I think people can take pride in the fact that we are doing a diligent job to make sure we understand when we are communicating directly with voters that they have all the information they need to make the best decision for themselves.
Some people have voted already, or at least received their ballot
Yes.
already, which is our military and overseas voters. I always find that fascinating because these people sometimes are voting and in late September, as well as people in far-flung Native American reservations. Why don't you tell me about those two groups and how they're kind of already voting?
Right. So by federal law, it's called UCAVA. We have to ensure that military personnel overseas have access to the ballot box, which is important. They're members of our community. They're serving our country. They're doing what we need them to do to protect our fundamental right to vote. That is happening now. Their spouses have access to that. Nevadans living overseas or overseas during the election can participate through the EASE system, which is a very secure system. The processes that are in place to ensure the security of the ballot are pretty significant. We're proud of that system. The Department of Defense has taken notice of the EASE system and is actually studying it to see if it is a product that we can expand to the rest of the country, because we have spent so much time in developing a secure system for those voters overseas. Over time, the legislature has increased the number of individuals who can participate through EASE, those who are homebound because of a disability, And that's our largest group of voters within the e-system. So to know that our disabled community has access to the ballot box is pretty fulfilling from a team perspective. And most recently, we expanded access to tribal members living on a tribal reservation because sometimes it's not easy to get ballots to registered Native Americans on tribal lands because they have a different address system. And polling locations, we also changed that in the 23 legislative session to allow polling locations on tribal lands to work with the clerks and to make sure that we're doing the best to ensure that every Nevadan across the state has access to the ballot box. I say this all the time again, is the more people we have participating in our election, the better off we are going to know about the priorities as a state, and we can work on those priorities together. And this weekend, I was out at the Walker River Paiute Tribe Pine Nut Festival, talking to members of the community about the e-system. We had a member vote there in front of us. We were watching. They obviously had the opportunity to vote within their comfort zone. And it was just wonderful to see the engagement from the community and the pride that the community was taking, that somebody really cared about having them participate in our democratic process.
Very cool, because they are, of course, Nevadans, and they should be able to vote just as easy as the rest of us here in metropolitan areas can as well. So, Secretary Aguilar, thank you so much for joining us. Keep the faith here in the last 40 days as we get down into the nitty-gritty of this thing, and we'll catch up with you soon.
All right, Ben, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to educate Nevada voters. This is critical time and a critical opportunity to learn more as we go through it. So thank you.
A special thanks to Aguilar for joining the show once again. If you got that form, do try and send it back. It should make the process a little smoother for you and election officials. Now to our third mailbag of this election season with our great morning show anchor, Chris Murphy.
I have a freakishly long torso.
That's making it in there.
It's strange.
That is definitely making it in there. All right. He anchors 4 hours every single morning, and he still makes time to come on Ballot Battleground Nevada. Chris Murphy, thank you for coming back.
Good to see you.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you here for another mailbag episode. You know, they loved the chemistry that we had so much last time. They loved the listener questions, and we get so many of them, we wanted to answer some more.
Well, you're just an easy guy to talk to. That's what it is. It takes two to tango, Ben Marjat.
Absolutely, it does.
Let's get the most important thing.
Tango by now.
Thank you. Let's get the most important thing out of the way. You named your son Sage after the state flower of Nevada. How is little Sage?
He is doing great. He is 2 years and 3-ish months now and running around like crazy, speaking like crazy. And most importantly for the Ballot Battleground Nevada audience, he can now say Washoe County. And which is literally this morning, Chris, I was getting ready and he said, I live Washoe County.
Oh,
it blew my mind. I'm like, how is he picking these things up?
And Daddy lives Washoe County politics. Right. That's your life.
And he can say Las Vegas. So for our Southern Nevada friends, he knows that we have a friend, Matt, that lives Matt in Las Vegas. I'm like, wow, dude, you just turned 2.
So speaking of Sage, if you think about it, the first presidential election of his lifetime will go down as the craziest election cycle. Ever.
Literally ever. And funny story, listeners might have heard this one before, but tell it again for our new listeners. He was born the day before the primary election in 2022. Me and my wife, Kenzie, who's very integral to the News 4 operation, we were both completely out of pocket for an entire election day, primary 2022, in the hospital watching. All of our coworkers do a great job covering it, but it was surreal to be there. So
you had bigger things on your plate.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to the mailbag.
Let's do it.
Do you want to tackle the first one? This is from someone on Reddit, Sacred Lambkin. Does Nevada do mail-in voting?
We do. This is a great question because it's from, I saw it down in the comments below. I believe this person used to live in Colorado, moved here. Maybe they do a little like half and half, but they're a Nevada resident. So they want to know, does Nevada do mail-in voting? And yes, within the last several years, Nevada passed universal mail-in voting. Initially, it was supposed to be it was passed in the COVID pandemic when we couldn't leave our homes. So we all voted by mail. Nevada Democrats, I believe in 2021, made it permanent. So for all elections moving forward, you're going to get a ballot in your mail. I believe in Washoe County, at least, they're sending them out in mid-October. I don't know the exact date. You can vote by that. You can send it back through USPS. You could drop it off at a drop box. You could go in early voting. And of course, you can always vote in on election day as well. So many options here in the Silver State to vote.
To get your vote counted for sure.
Yeah. How do you vote, Chris?
Well, I've done mail-in before, but you know what? I'm kind of old school. I'm a traditionalist.
Yeah.
I like to actually go in person. I like to get the little I voted sticker.
You have to get the sticker, absolutely.
And I like to thank the volunteers for their time because of what a big civic duty and opportunity it is.
Absolutely critical.
And it's one of those collective moments that we don't have anymore. We're always just on our phones these days. You walk around, everyone has their head down. But when there's a time to come together, whether it's a concert or a sporting event, or something like this where we're voting, no matter what your politics or how you vote, we're all doing it as Americans.
I couldn't agree more. I do love being at the polling places, reporting on election day. You see people getting their I voted stickers or the first-time voters getting their certificate. It's awesome. I've collected, Chris, every I voted sticker since I started voting when I turned 18. So I have like 10 or some of these stickers now.
That's cool.
And it's a cool little, I put them on a binder paper and get to keep track of, all the different counties that I voted in.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Well, I like that we have mail-in voting only for it's so inclusive.
Yeah, very, very inclusive.
All right, next question. How much do you think the election results will differ from the polls this year? This is from Manifested Reality writing this in on Reddit.
It's anyone's guess. I really wish, we had these polls that were perfect and could predict the outcome every time, but we saw in 2016 a mass polling error that everyone thought Hillary Clinton was going to win that election. Obviously, that's not what happened. Pollsters, I think, are adjusting there is, a sense out there that there are some Trump voters that don't want to tell a pollster who they're voting for. And so pollsters have tried to adjust for that in recent cycles and anticipate that kind of non-response bias, I think they call it. But this is not a 538 politics podcast. We're not going to get so deep in the weeds on the polls. It's going to be close. It's going to be a razor-thin margin in Nevada. And briefly, I will mention the polls. Kamala Harris leading by 0.5 percentage point in Nevada's polling average from 538. Obviously, that's well within the margin of errors, which is usually 3 or 4 points. So it is anyone's guess at this point. That's what makes it interesting and exciting. And it's what makes kind of these last few weeks, we only have 40 days left or something, all that more important. These campaigns and the volunteers, they do matter when the race is this close.
Razor thin. All right, here's another question from Law and Order Nerd. I love that on Reddit as well. Ballot counting has been extremely slow here in Nevada for the last 2 elections. In fact, I believe I still have memes from 2020 making fun of us. What progress has been made in speeding up the counting process here in Nevada? And did the state and local governments invest the money needed to increase the counting speed? If so, how much faster can we expect to see results compared to 2020?
Yeah, the memes were flying around on election night. Everyone was waiting on Nevada. We were counting our results with Windows 98. I'm just kidding. But that was what people were saying about us.
Sure wasn't Windows 95?
Yeah, right. Older than that. We were the laughing stock. So I guess a little bit of good news and bad news for the Law and Order nerd here. Yes, there have been a couple of steps, and I'll walk us through those that have been taken to make things probably a little bit faster. But at the end of the day, counting mail ballots specifically takes time. So number one, election officials can start counting ballots as soon as 8 a.m. on election day. It used to be they had to wait until the polls close at 7 p.m. on election day. So that gives them, a full day's kind of head start, if you will, to start counting all those mail ballots that have arrived prior. There's more staff in the Washoe County Registrar's office. I'm pulling up my phone to just make sure I get the number right. There were 9 people in the County Registrar's office back in 2022. That's basically doubled now, or it has doubled. 18 people in the Washoe County Registrar's office. So the county has invested money into boosting the staffing levels there. There's a new mail ballot processor that's supposed to be faster and more exciting. And so those things will help for sure a little bit on the margins, but there's going to be a huge turnout in this election. We know that. And at the end of the day, counting mail ballots simply takes longer. You have to have a machine or a person open each ballot individually, check the signature, run it through the Scantron, if you will. That just takes a lot longer. And with 2/3 of voters using the mail-in voting, it's going to take a little bit of time. So maybe, long story short, a little bit faster than in 2020, but it's still going to take longer than some of these other states that don't have widespread universal mail-in voting across the board.
Good answer, Ben. I love how much research you do. For these podcasts that you record weekly, how much time would you say you spend
A lot of time behind the scenes. Yeah, it's becoming, I still do 4 stories a week on air. But inevitably I'm doing podcast stuff all throughout the week so that, I'm prepared and informed coming in to answer our amazing listener questions.
You're killing it, Ben Marjat.
Thank you, Chris.
Someday we'll tell your son how much work you did. Hi, Ben. This is from Politics Scare Me, which I love. The third Politics Scare Me on Reddit. Hi, Ben. With the promise of former President Trump to remove the taxation on tips, which has now been adopted, I should say, by Vice President Harris, and overtime pay. Would this be something that he could enact unilaterally through an executive order? I know Representative Horsford has pushed a bill forward in the House to remove taxes on tips, but if it were to fail, could a president do it through an executive order? Also, what would the impact be of removing taxation on tips and overtime pay here in Nevada? Thank you.
This is a great question of a critical issue here in Nevada because Nevada has the most tipped workers of any state, of course, with the service industry and the strip and tourism economy here in northern Nevada as well. My understanding, and a Harris campaign official recently said this too, it would take an act of Congress, a legislation to pass in the House and Senate in order to remove the federal taxation on tips. So it seems to be that there is bipartisan support for doing this. Obviously, it's supported by President Trump, who first raised it, supported by Kamala Harris and many in Nevada's Democratic senators. There is bipartisan support for it, but yes, it would need to go through the House and the Senate. As for what the impact of removing it on the taxation on tips in Nevada would be, I need to do more research on this myself, Chris, but it would obviously be huge. There's a sizable portion of taxable workers here in Nevada. Nationwide, it's about 2.5%, but I think in Nevada, it's closer to 4%. So, roughly 1 in 20 or 1 in 25 people is getting their income through tips. And it remains to be seen a little bit. Tax experts are kind of worried about the implications of this, definitely for the amount of revenue that the federal government is bringing in. A lot of questions still to be answered, and hope to do some more stories on this in the coming weeks as people are considering this proposal when they vote.
Absolutely. Okay, good. This is from Judy on Facebook, and she says, who's behind question 3? What is so bad about it? And that both the Democratic and Republican parties are sending out brochures urging a no vote.
Yeah, politics makes strange bedfellows. You've got, high-ranking Republicans in the Republican Party, high-ranking Democrats and the Democratic Party, and progressive groups all kind of allying together to advocate against question 3. But I'll start with who's behind it. And a lot of times you'll hear that it's out-of-state billionaires, and really that's true. Back in 2022, the first time it was on the ballot, the overwhelming majority of the donations to the Nevada Voters First PAC came from out-of-state donors. And this cycle, the Yes on 3 campaign, we only have one campaign finance report so far, but 95% of the money was from out of state. The big backer of all this is a woman by the name of Catherine Gale, I believe. She was the president and CEO of a family-owned company, Gale Foods. She's an author and philanthropist, and she's kind of pioneered the concept of final 5 voting, but very wealthy woman. I don't know what state she's in, but out of state, that is spending a heck of a lot of money here in Nevada to the tune of several $1 million to try and get this passed.
Jeremy writes on X this time, abortion is on the ballot, but will not be added in the Constitution until voted on a second time? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Correct. Yes. And I'll put a link to another episode that we've done on this recently in the show notes where we go in a lot more detail on the abortion ballot measure. But long story short, it is question 6, the Reproductive Rights Amendment. And it simply asks, do you want to enshrine abortion rights up until the point of fetal viability in Nevada's Constitution? Right now, we have a 24-week cutoff. That's where the threshold is set at, 24 weeks. This would make it a cutoff on fetal viability, and it would be in the state constitution if it were to pass twice. It's going to be on the ballot in November. If it passes in November, it's going to be on your 2026 ballot. And if it were to pass then, it would be in the state constitution, this protection of abortion rights until fetal viability. And of course, the backdrop of all this, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision, and many states around the country have rolled back abortion protections, enacted these strict measures. Nevada right now, it's protected in state law. It is not in the Constitution. It's kind of a misnomer that's out there. It is in the state law. This would put it in the state constitution. One extra layer of protection, if you will, that would be even more difficult to undo here in the Silver State.
Interesting. And, back to the tips question that we had earlier,
Sure.
it strikes me that there's somewhat of a parallel with the student loan forgiveness issue. And Nancy Pelosi came out against it, saying, hey, President Biden, you can't just unilaterally forgive student debt. That's a federal program. That has the power of the purse go through Congress, the legislative branch. They're the ones who can come up with monetary policy, essentially, not policy, but
Sure.
law.
Yeah.
And then it can be signed by the president. In this case, it seems like that might be what they're getting at there with the tip issue when it comes to Congress would need to do that, not President Harris or President Trump.
That is a really good point. Yeah. And perhaps the president could do it through executive order, but we know in this day and age that every single executive order is going to be litigated. There will be lawsuits filed. In the case of the student loan forgiveness, a big chunk of that program was struck down in the courts. And so the safer, better way from a policy standpoint to do this is through legislation, through Congress, and it'll hold up a little bit better in the courts as compared to the executive order. Maybe a president could do it through an EO, executive order, but certainly when we're talking about, the power of the purse is held by Congress. And so presumably that's going to have to go through the House and the Senate. And we'll see, both of the major candidates in this race support this proposal of ending taxes on tips. And so regardless of who wins, we're going to keep doing stories on it because it would have, of course, huge implications here in Nevada.
Just be a good tipper like Ben Marjat. You're a good podcaster and a good tipper.
How much do you tip? Like say a haircut,
Man, don't get me started on this issue.
You're a good tipper, right?
I'm a good tipper, but I think with traditional things, what I hate is you'll go up to the counter and order one of those places.
Yeah.
And then they'll
spin the iPad around.
And the options are, right, like 20, 22, 25, or up to 30.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, wait, I'm just standing here ordering, and then you're just going to give me my food at the counter to leave.
Yeah.
So in that case, I'll do custom tip, and I'll give them, I don't know, 10%?
Yeah.
But if I'm sitting down there waiting on you, yes, I'm giving their traditional 20% typically or more.
Yeah, if they're bringing the food out to you, then absolutely you
Right.
should get a tip.
And they work hard.
And bartenders, definitely, always tip your bartenders. I tip a minimum $1 every single drink,
You bet.
if not more.
Do you ever wait tables?
Did I ever wait tables? I had a lot of strange jobs over the years, and that wasn't one of them. I didn't do a restaurant serving gig. I was though. I was in the service industry in a different way, which was, and I don't think I've ever told this story on this podcast, but I was the Chick-fil-A cow.
What?
The Chick-fil-A cow.
Yes. What did you have to do as the Chick-fil-A cow?
You had to go around Chick-fil-A entertaining children, handing out like stickers and things. I would go into the drive-through, like kind of while cars were waiting and kind of entertain them and dance. There is a clip of me in the costume dancing somewhere. You obviously don't know that it's me, but it is me in the costume dancing. And funny, connects back to tips. There was a child that was like 6 or 7 years old. I was in high school, so it was a long time ago. That came up to me and would tip the Chick-fil-A cow. He would bring me like a couple dimes or quarters from his allowance that week to bring to the Chick-fil-A cow. And I just always loved that. But you bring smiles to the little kids' faces inside the Chick-fil-A. And
That's
now
cute.
I'm just thinking of when I get to take my son to Chick-fil-A. He'll probably be terrified of the cow at first.
Right.
But for the older kids, they love it.
That's a great story.
What was your weirdest job?
I waited tables for sure.
Yeah.
Mimi's Cafe, and then when I was in Bakersfield, I worked at a place called Bootleggers. Good food at this brew pub.
Yeah.
Just getting started in the TV business.
Great life experience.
Yeah.
What was your wackiest job, though?
Right here, doing this right now with you,
true,
Ben Marjat.
Speaking about whatever for 4 hours every morning.
I worked after college. I worked at a place called the Gym Bag. It was like a, t-shirt place for sports memorabilia.
Yeah.
And the boss always, you had to answer the phone. This place is long out of business. It's a great day at the Gym Bag. This is Chris. May I help you? And so my girlfriend at the time would call me just to give me grief because she wanted to hear me answer the phone. It's a great day. And she'd go, is it a great day? I'm like, oh, just shut up.
Let me work here. I'm trying to work.
Quit harassing me.
And now you get to entertain people on the
It's
morning
fun.
show every single morning.
It's fun. I'm so
Good
glad you
skills.
started this podcast because you talk about local stuff. We're getting so many national stories where they call our state Nevada and everything else. But you're hyper local, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's been fun to do this mailbag with you.
We're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep taking your questions again, especially question 3 questions. Hashtag NVQ3 debate. Can't promote that enough. Chris Murphy, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Chick-fil-A Cal Marjat. Thank you, brother.
I'll have to post that picture now. Keep sending those questions in. We'll try and squeeze in as many as we can during this chaotic election season. Finally, another installment of our fact-checking segment where we explain and add context to the commercials you see on TV. The high price of prescription drugs is a top concern for many Nevadans, so it's no surprise that it's emerged as a key issue in Nevada's all-important race for U.S. Senate. The National Republican Senatorial Committee, which spends big to try to elect Republicans to the Senate, is running this 30-second spot attacking Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen on Big Pharma. Let's listen.
I'm a senior getting by on Social Security and Medicare. Jackie Rosen is a multimillionaire who's getting richer from high drug prices. Rosen owns up to $300,000 of pharmaceutical company stocks. And she's taken hundreds of thousands of campaign cash from Big Pharma. Jackie Rosen's not on our side. She's out for herself.
NRSC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
You heard there a woman from Dayton named Jeannie saying Jackie Rosen is getting richer from high drug prices. The first claim is that she owns up to $300,000 of pharmaceutical company stocks. A statement from the Rosen campaign didn't specifically address whether that was true, so it's unclear, but they said she hasn't bought a new stock since she's been in office and hasn't sold off a single stock in over 5 years. Rosen has joined a bill that would ban members of Congress and their families from owning and trading individual stocks. And the second claim is that she took hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from Big Pharma. This is true, according to OpenSecrets.org. That's a nonpartisan independent group that researches money in politics. Rosen has received $364,000 worth of campaign donations from the pharmaceutical and health products industry since 2019. The ad implies that because of this, she doesn't have a personal interest in actually lowering drug prices, but Rosen says she's taking on the issue, supporting legislation that was strongly opposed by the pharmaceutical industry. It's highlighted in a 30-second spot from her campaign called Prescriptions. It started running a few months ago. Let's listen.
She took on the big drug companies and won.
Senator Jackie Rosen today announcing a cap on out-of-pocket prescription drug costs,
Giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices.
Nevada seniors are seeing a drop in their medication prices.
The out-of-pocket cost is dropping for 27 drugs.
And capping the price of insulin.
The cost of insulin went down to $35 for mostly everyone.
I'm Jackie Rosen, and I approve this message because I'll keep fighting for lower prices.
In that spot, Rosen claims she took on the big drug companies and won, capping drug prices, giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices, and capping the price of insulin at $35 per month. This is all referring to the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, passed by Democrats, including Rosen, and signed into law by President Biden. For the first time, it did allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices. They have negotiated the first 10 drugs under this law. It's expected to save Medicare enrollees $1.5 billion in 2026, which is when this takes effect. As for insulin, yes, the IRA capped the monthly cost of insulin for people on Medicare at $35 a month, and this started in 2023, so it's in effect now. One study found that had this provision been in place in 2020, 1.5 million seniors would have saved an average of $500 on insulin that year. And we'll clarify here, former President Donald Trump has taken credit for lowering insulin costs. Now, there was a program instituted in 2020 by his administration, but this was a voluntary time-limited model. It expired in 2023. The Biden law is not voluntary, rather mandatory, and it's for all Medicare enrollees, and it does not expire. We hope that gives you some more information to keep in mind when you're seeing these ads over and over and over the next several weeks. If you made it to the end of this episode, we really appreciate it. If you have guest ideas, episode ideas, questions, comments, compliments, concerns, anything, feel free to shoot us an email to bjmarjat@sbgtv.com and put Ballot Battleground Nevada in the subject line. And if you have a moment, we'd really appreciate it if you left a rating and a review. That helps the show up higher in searches so more people can discover Ballot Battleground Nevada. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in your feed with a new episode next week.